Today on the show, I discuss Life After Beth from 2014 and Last Night in Soho from 2021. All right, everyone. Welcome to Brandon at Random Reviews. I am your host, Brandon Griffiths. Thank you for stopping by. I do appreciate it. Today, I want to talk about a guy named Pete Davidson. What's his deal? I can't really wrap my head around it. Ever since I heard that this guy existed, I've known that he has dated top 10 hotties, and I can't understand it. All these extremely attractive women, and I gotta understand, is Pete Davidson a good looking guy? Because I can look at Ryan Gosling or a Chris Evans or something like that, and I can think to myself, that's a good looking guy. I just know, you know what I mean? But he doesn't, I don't know looking at him. I'm not saying he's some uggo. I'm not saying he's a bad looking guy at all. I'm just saying that I don't know immediately to look at him that he is an attractive or an unattractive guy. I couldn't tell you to save my life. But, I first heard about him around the time he was breaking up with Ariana Grande, whatever it is. And I was like, damn, that dude got that chick? Holy shit, there's hope for me after all. And then he started dating Kate Beckinsale, who was quite a bit older than him. And Kate Beckinsale is honestly easily top 5 for super attractive women, celebrity women, that is. And it baffled me. I was just like, holy shit, this dude's fucking pulling these chicks, and I don't really understand how it's happening. And once Kim Kardashian and Kanye West broke up, it was almost immediately Pete Davidson on the prowl, fucking starting to date Kim Kardashian. And say what you will about Kim Kardashian and her rise to fame and how she got where she is. And she might not have much for, talent to make her a celebrity. She's really good looking. She's a nice looking person. She rose to fame. I remember the show The Soup with Joel McHale always commented on the fact that Kim Kardashian was famous because she had a big ass and a sex tape. And that may be true, but all things considered, she is very good looking. Anyway, all I'm asking is, do I need to be emulating Pete Davidson more in my daily life? Do I need to try and look more like this guy? At some point, should I dye my hair bleach blonde and try and rock that look for a while? Is there something I need to be doing to be more like this dude and land these chicks that he's landing? Because I can't wrap my head around it. It's baffling. I don't understand, but I'm not trying to be a hater. I'm just saying I don't look at Pete Davidson and think, man, that's a dude that's going to pull some chicks. I don't know when I look at him apparently he's very attractive. Apparently that's a thing. So I just have to live with that. Our first movie today is Life After Beth, released August 15th, 2014, directed by Jeff Baena. And he made such movies as I Heart Huckabees, Joshy, The Little Hours, Horse Girl, Spin Me Round, and that was kind of it for what I saw. He also wrote this movie, which is, it's always interesting when that happens. You never really know if that means much or, if it means absolutely nothing. And our first cast member, who is not top billed necessarily, but is the main character, the main protagonist of this movie, is Dane DeHaan, and he plays the character Zach. And a couple of movies that he's been in, he was in The Amazing Spider-Man 2 as Harry Osborn / the Green Goblin. That was the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man movies. And then he was in A Cure for Wellness. He was in Valerian and a City of a Thousand Planets. And that was a terrible movie. And he was in a movie called 000. One thing I will say about Dane DeHaan is he looks like what would happen if you crossed Leonardo DiCaprio's character from Titanic with a recovering goth kid. Like, that's what I see when I look at Dane DeHaan. I don't know why, but that's, especially in this movie, he's got the hair going on, all that shit. It's a lot to fucking take in. It really is. So then we've got Aubrey Plaza, who I have noted here is hot. And let's see, she plays the character Beth. She is she got her claim to fame in Parks and Rec as the character April Ludgate. And she was in Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, Safety Not Guaranteed, which is a solid one. It's like a nice indie flick. I really enjoyed it. And she was in something called The To-Do List, which I've been meaning to see, but it got less than stellar reviews, so I don't know if I really want to check it out that bad. She looked fan-fucking-tastic in Dirty Grandpa. She was in Mike and Dave Need Wedding Dates with Zac Efron, Anna Kendrick, and that guy from Workaholics I can never remember the name of. And she was also in the Child's Play remake, which was terrible. Paul Reiser plays Zach's dad. Cheryl Hines plays Zach's mom. Matthew Gray Gubler plays Zach's brother. And Matthew Gray Gubler, in case you don't know, is the guy from Criminal Minds with like the long hair and the really like slender face, I guess you want to say. John C. Reilly plays Maury, who is Beth's dad. And then Molly Shannon plays Beth's mom. Anna Kendrick, who I have written down here, is hot, the love of my life. Honestly, of all of the women I say that are the love of my life, I can't think of one who is more the love of my life than Anna Kendrick, but I digress. She plays the character Erica. Okay, plot synopsis. Zach is distraught following the death of his girlfriend Beth and develops a relationship with her parents. When her parents suddenly stop talking to him, Zach gets suspicious. That's about as much as I can say without giving the whole fucking plot away. But I think based on what you see on the cover of this movie, you kind of have to know, like, you know what's going to happen. And so I do want to take this opportunity to say that there will be spoilers in these reviews today. If you can't take the heat, stay out of the kitchen. Please just, understand that if you think you might want to see one of these movies, I'll tell you right now, Last Night in Soho is by far the better of the two movies. I really enjoyed it. But I'll get right into it with Life After Beth here. I noticed in this movie right away that Aubrey Plaza seems to play herself, essentially, in like a lot of roles. I'm not saying every role she's in, she's playing the same character, but it's pretty fucking close. Like, it's not much stray from, and I guess it's difficult to, say that somebody has range or not, because there are plenty of characters, or there are plenty of actors that only play characters of a certain kind, and they're not showing much range at all. But I just feel like because Aubrey Plaza plays such a distinct character, it's easier to call that out. And so they have the funeral at the beginning of this movie, and the movie is called Life After Beth. So you're just kind of assuming based on that this funeral was for Beth, right? That's the general assumption. But it's like you really don't know. They're not very clear about it. And I would say, like, Dane DeHaan shows up, and he's like an interesting choice for this movie. He's good, but I've never really encountered many leading man roles that were good with him. Like, he seems like he'd be a better side character, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm way off base. It seems as though at this point, even though we haven't gotten any kind of verification of the sort, it's like we know that Dane DeHaan's girlfriend has died, and that his parents went to the funeral, and his brother stayed home. So it's like, it's not like Dane DeHaan's family member that died or something like that. So it's like they're kind of laying the groundwork. And they finally, after like all this time, confirm, because he says that his girlfriend died, and they actually like say it out loud, and you're finally like, okay, here we go. And then we go, so Zach I'm going to call Dane DeHaan by his character's name, Zach, because Dane DeHaan is a lot to say. Zach goes over to the Slocum's house, which is Beth's family's house, and when he gets there, the housekeeper is leaving in complete distress, and Zach doesn't really know what the fuck's going on, and the dad is like, Beth's dad is like trying to bond with him and trying to like reach out to him, just kind of help him understand that, like, okay, it turns out that Zach and Beth had been going through some difficulties in their relationship and had been having arguments and stuff like that. And John C. Reilly as the dad, he basically just explains to him like, hey, you really can't let that weigh on you forever. You can't let the entire relationship be defined by what discussion you guys had, or, what few little fleeting moments of arguments you had before she died. That's not really fair to you. And they start, they're playing chess, Zach and the dad, and then Zach's sitting there, and Maury, the dad, brings out like a one of those tin cans, like those big ones that you put like sewing supplies in, and he takes them and he opens up the can, and he pulls out a joint, and he decides, they're going to start smoking, and Zach is kind of iffy on it, but he does it anyway. And I kind of thought maybe it was going to take it into a weird place, but it really didn't. It just, I was really glad that they didn't do some stupid fucking, let's see what smoking weed is like for people who don't normally smoke weed and stuff like that. And so on his way out at the end of the night, it's super late, Zach asks Beth's mom if, 'cause she's packing away Beth's things, and Zach asks Beth's mom if she would give her this, or give him this scarf that she's packing away. And she's like, oh yeah, for sure. And so he's like wearing this scarf through a decent amount of this movie, and it's really fucking weird. And when he gets home, it was at this point where he gets home at like 3 a.m, and, Cheryl Hines is his mom, and she's like yelling across the house at Zach for showing up at like 3 a.m. And I'm like, is this dude supposed to be in high school? Are these two supposed to be in high school? Because, even in 2014, and Dane DeHaan has a young look to him, but he still has that like goth kid recovery look, and it's like, I can't tell from looking at him if he's, how old he really should be looking like, you know what I mean? I didn't look up how old they actually were, but I didn't really think Aubrey Plaza and Dane DeHaan looked like they were in high school, but that is what we were led to believe in this movie. And it was like at this point that I finally realized that his dad was Paul Reiser, because they were focusing so much on Cheryl Hines. And Cheryl Hines, she always sticks out to me because she's got that mouthful of teeth that's like, she's not like an unattractive woman, but she's got such large teeth, and it stands out. And so his brother, we see him the next day, is he's like a security guard or something, and he's got, he's the guy from Criminal Minds, and he just looks like he looks the weirdest with short hair. It doesn't really work for me. I don't really understand what I'm looking at when I see this guy and he doesn't have long hair, but I'm sure he cut his hair in Criminal Minds. Please, you don't have to tell me that happened. I don't need to know anything about Criminal Minds. I've seen enough. And then he starts, Zach's going to bed one night and he's got this fucking scarf of Beth's on, and he's just getting a little weird with it. And he goes to like basically touch himself with this fucking scarf, and then his brother like breaks into his room and catches him doing it without even intending to, and the brother's like accusing him of fucking the scarf and shit. And it's such an odd choice, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, why did you have that in here? Like, I guess to show how much he missed Beth. Like, all right. And so after this, Zach goes over to the parents' house, and then it's like, because they haven't been talking to him, they haven't really said shit to him, and it's like, what are we doing here? You know what I mean? And like, what is happening? Why are they being weird? And he goes over to their house and he looks in one of their windows and he swears he sees Beth, right? And it's at this point that his brother comes up all of a sudden out of nowhere and is like confronting him about being on these people's property when he's not supposed to be, and he's doing all the stuff he shouldn't be. And it's like, okay. And he basically stops Zach from finding out more about what's going on. And then later, Zach actually does go to their house again, and he I think he goes again. I don't think he stays there, but basically it turns out that Beth's really alive, so to speak. I said at this point, it's not a horror movie, I don't think, because it's basically billed as a horror comedy movie on IMDb, and I think that's probably more accurate, because there are aspects of this movie that are not horror at all. They aren't funny, or they're not scary, and they're not at all frightening or anything. So it's like, I get it. If it's a comedy, it's got the level of horror that you would want for a horror comedy. And the Slocum house, as you're looking around, while you're trying to figure out what's going on with Beth and why she's alive and what happened with all of this, you're looking around at their house, and they've got like that reddish, brownish, orange tile with like the black grout in the middle all throughout their house. And I'm like, God, that is a fucking rough choice. I don't know about that. I wouldn't mind it here or there, but I wouldn't want it everywhere, I mean, John C. Reilly, at this point, I'm establishing that he's killing it. He's fucking great in this movie. He's good. He's pretty much great in everything, but it's like, he does have the comedy chops, he has the serious chops, but he's not like a leading man. Like, I've never seen a movie other than Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story, that starred him. And by the way, I love Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story. It's such a great satire of like all the biopics of musicians and stuff. It's at this point that we establish, I believe for the first time, that Beth was killed by way of a venomous snake bite. And it just fucking blew my mind. I was like, are you fucking kidding me? That's what they're having? Like, it shows in the beginning of the movie that she's out walking, but you don't really see anything. You don't really know what's going on. And Maurice Slocum is explaining the situation, and he's basically saying that Beth came home late the night after Maury and Zach were playing chess with each other, and Zach had gone home, and Beth just showed up to the house and was like, hey, what's up? And she didn't really understand what had happened. She didn't really think that she had been killed or anything like that, and it was just really bizarre. And the parents are just treating it like it's a fucking miracle. Like, they just think it's the most wonderful thing that's ever happened. They can't really believe it. It's just so cool. They don't know why. They're just thankful. Beth still thinks that it's like school time, but it's actually the summer. So she just has some big gap in her memory of, when they died. And like, all she remembers is that she was dating Zach and this and that and the other thing. And at one point, she is doing this thing. She is fucking playing with this guy's ear. She's playing with Zach's ear. And to me, I've gone to like a strip club before, and I got a lap dance, and the stripper was like playing with my ear, and I didn't want to make a big scene about it, but I'm like, get the fuck out of my ear. Like, you don't know, where that ear's been. You know what I mean? Like, get the fuck out of here, And I always get really distressed when I think about people playing around somebody's ear, because I'm like, it's like one of the harder parts of your body to clean, like there's a lot of nooks and crannies in there and things that I don't understand. And it's not a good look to play around somebody's ear. They're being weird about Beth going out. Like, if it's not at night, they don't want her going out, and it's weird because you don't really, that they're not telling you something, because they know they have reason to believe that Beth is going to have problems if she goes out during the day. And they offer that the two of them, Zach and Beth, could swim at their pool because it's in the shade. Basically, John C. Reilly offers Zach a swimming suit of his, and they make reference to the fact that like John C. Reilly is obviously like significantly larger than Dane DeHaan, but and the mom during this time, they're doing all this shit. The mom is taking pictures, and I don't know if it's just like that whole thing of like they thought they lost her and now they're gonna make the most of her while they have her. and that could be, but it's like after she does this, after she takes a picture of them out by the pool, Aubrey Plaza's like sitting on the edge of the pool with her feet in, and they show a shot of what is presumably a snake bite on her inner thigh, and she is otherwise without flaw. Like, there's nothing else amiss about her. And so it's like, at that point, once you see that, you're like, okay, so this isn't like a clone situation. This isn't anything like that. This is clearly like she's come back to life. And so basically, throughout this whole course of action, the parents make it clear that they really don't want Beth to know that she died. You know, they don't want to tell her. They don't want Zach to tell her. They don't want anything like that to happen. They make him promise not to tell her what happened. They absolutely don't want her to go out in the daytime for any reason. All of a sudden, the two of them go out, Zach and Beth, and I don't remember. Yeah, it's in the daytime. They sneak out, and basically they go, and obviously, you know, hormones and all that shit, like they're super horny for each other, so they go out and they find like the first park with like sand in it that they can find, and they run out and they fuck on the fucking ground at this playground. And it's like, that's fucking weird. Like, I don't give a shit if you're like one of those people that's into doing stuff in weird places because you're, you know, turned on by it or something. It's fucking bizarre. After all of this, you know, the sun's out and Beth comes home and she's got this like huge blister across the side of her face, and it's like, holy shit, what the fuck is going on? And like, for some reason, the parents knew that this was going to happen. Like, they knew that she was going to get sunburned or she was going to have skin damage of some sort. And they like, while they're back at the house, they keep like making out violently in front of the parents, and it's like, what the fuck are you doing? And so they basically tell Zach like to fuck off because, you know, he did this to her, you know, he caused her skin damage and all this stuff. And late at night, Zach sneaks back to their house, and sneaks out with Beth, and they go to the beach. And this is the weirdest fucking, like, this would make me so uncomfortable, but like, Zach pulls out a guitar and he starts like singing a song he wrote for her, and it's like, what are you doing? You know, like, what is this? This is not my idea of a good time. And she immediately starts to get like angry about what he's doing, and she can't really understand why he's doing it. And, you know, he's basically like saying like he's not with his bandmates because he went solo. And all of a sudden, Beth starts fucking raging. Like, this music is not, you know, sitting well with her. And they just, other than the whole not liking the idea of having somebody sing to me like that, because it's just awkward to me. He really sets her off, and she like, they're at this like lifeguard house thing like you see on TV. And she starts like fucking destroying this house, and she eventually sets it on fire. And then it's like, Zach is so desperate to fucking tell her what's going on. Anyway, and it's like she's got like superhuman strength. Like, she is tearing apart that lifeguard house like crazy. And it's like she's fucking pissed, and she doesn't give a shit. When they finally get back to the car, though, she basically just reacts in the most ridiculous way. Like, she sits down in the car, and Zach closes the door, and he goes to walk around the other way, and she like screams and fucking breaks the window. And Zach's like, it's okay, I'm just going to the other side. I'm going to be right back, you know, like, I'm not going anywhere. And she's like, okay. And then this is when we find out that she's calmed by jazz music. And I can't remember if or when this is established in other zombie movies, but it's basically, you know, a thing apparently, that she's like calmed by slow jazz music. And that's apparently like, it was having the opposite effect on her when he was playing, you know, his music and stuff. And it's still not clear at this point how the parents knew not to let Beth out in the daylight. You don't really have a good idea of why that is. And so I'm saying this might be a horror movie after all at this point, which I still maintain it's not like a full-on horror movie. And Beth has been like taking mud at her house, and she's she's mudded all the walls of the attic that she's sleeping in. And apparently this is like a running thing with the zombies of this movie, is like they love the attic, you know? I don't know what it is. And she's like forcing herself on Zach because, you know, they've just come back and you see her how her walls are all mudded. And Zach is like not even, yeah, he's not into it. Her breath smells like shit. He basically just pushes her away and says he doesn't want anything to do with it. And basically he just leaves, like he fucking abandons her there and leaves her there. And like Anna Kendrick shows up. Zach goes to this diner. Anna Kendrick shows up. Adam Pally is actually the waiter, and Anna Kendrick just happens upon Zach, and apparently their parents used to know each other or whatever, like their moms used to be friends or something. And I you know, it's at this point you're supposed to understand as a viewer that Anna Kendrick is the more desirable female character for Zach's character, you know? And you see while Zach and Erica, Anna Kendrick's character, are talking at this table, you see this guy in the kitchen, this cook, is like throwing a shit fit, and you don't really know why. And they just kind of like, it's kind of unresolved. And so Zach's leaving, you know, he pays for their meal and he says goodbye or whatever. And he goes to leave, you know, he's in his car, and as he's driving out, he accidentally hits Beth, who happens to have come there. He hits her with his car. It's really like a shitty fucking effect, because like basically what they do is they have to have this car propped up on Aubrey Plaza, and so obviously they have to have her laying under it, but they have to have the car jacked up so it's not like sitting right on top of her. And I mean, the thing is the problem is like the suspension of the, I don't know cars. I mean, I really should, but I don't know cars very well. But like the suspension of the vehicle, like the wheel is hanging down like the car is being lifted off the ground, you know? And everything about physics would tell you that in this situation, it's supposed to look like Aubrey Plaza is what's holding this car up. But just intuitively speaking, you look at it and it's like, it looks like this car is, and this is I'm sure what it is, it's being jacked up at a different point in the car, and the wheel is still hanging way lower than it normally would if the car were resting on the ground. And what they should have done is they should have taken like ratchet straps and tightened up the fucking wheels so it looked more like it was resting on it. You know what I mean? It would have been, and they could have lowered the vehicle a little more. It would have looked a lot better, but leave it to them. I mean, they're the pros. Maybe there wasn't an easy way that was still safe to do it. Beth starts freaking out at this point about how things are going. You know, he's trying to figure out what's going on with Zach and this Erica girl. And he basically just tells her what the situation is, and it's legitimately what the situation is. You know, it's that their mothers are friends, and he just saw her and said hi or whatever. And it's like Beth is just so aggressive at this point. Like, she's so angry with Zach, and she just is pissed off. And then Zach kind of like calms her down and, you know, makes her feel better. You know, it's at this point that I'm like, I'm kind of understanding why the reviews might not have been quite so great for this movie. And he decides at this point, after Beth's freaked out, that he's going to take her to her grave and just show her what's happened and explain what's going on. And then maybe she'll, you know, understand it. He basically tries to tell her that she's like not the same person anymore, and she's angry and violent, and she doesn't want to act normal, and he doesn't really want to be with her anymore. And then she just flips out and takes off in his car and drives away, and she does a terrible job driving. And when Zach gets back to his house, you know, he goes and he sees that his grandpa, his deceased grandpa, is there and is alive. And, you know, more and more dead people are apparently at this point coming back, and they're, you know, just showing up out of nowhere. And it's like, okay, I don't know what to make of it all. I mean, it's just kind of, it's a strange situation. But they're not really like, there's not really any exposition, and they're in desperate need of exposition. Just something to fill in the blanks of like, hey, this is what's going on. this is what's happening. This is why all these people are showing up. This is why the things are the way they are right now. So Zach goes and sees the Slocums, and Maury tries to force Zach to undo all the stuff that he's revealed to Beth, and he's convinced that that's what caused everything to spiral out of control. And they're making a connection with the housekeeper who left. Like, it was a very brief moment in the beginning of the movie where the housekeeper left and was very distraught. And basically Beth is destroying everything at the house, and so they're like, well, we need to look into this Haitian housekeeper. At least Zach wants to look into the Haitian housekeeper. He goes to find her. Her name's Perline, and before he can even leave to go see Perline, Beth gets in Zach's car with him, and she's just fucking deteriorating rapidly. And he goes to find the housekeeper, and only her cousin is there, and the cousin says that her leaving had nothing to do with Beth. It was just that Maury was a total creep or something. And Maury knocks Zach out, and out of nowhere, after he's like left the housekeeper's place, and he knocks him out and takes Beth away, puts like a sack over her head and stuff, and he's wielding a shotgun. And it's like, I'm telling you this story like this because this is the way the movie presents it to you. You don't really, I mean, I get it. It feels almost like real life. You know what I mean? Like it feels like if this were really what happened to you, you wouldn't have a narrator to explain to you what was going on. You would just accept it, right? After Maury takes Beth away, Zach goes back to his house to find, he's looking for his parents, but he finds a man sitting in his living room with a machete, and the man just runs away, and then he looks, and there are a bunch of burned bodies in their backyard, and he's like, what the fuck? And he just assumes, I guess, that it's his parents and brother or whatever. And Zach packs a bag to go somewhere, and apparently it's Machu Picchu that he's actually planning to go to. And then they really make it a point to show that he's taking a picture of Beth with him. And it doesn't really seem to be relevant to anything else in the story, but they keep fucking showing this shot of him taking the picture and putting it away and not putting it in and then putting it away. And it's like, okay, he's on the fence about going. Okay, I get it. And then he stops at the store to take what's left of the canned food. And I mean, the Slocums, he goes back to the Slocums, and they're still in such denial about the whole thing. Basically, you find out that Beth ate her dad, and the mom is still there, and the mom has Beth chained to a stove, like an oven, and Beth can't really get away, but like Beth's super strong, so she actually is able to get away. It's just an awkward move, and Zach kind of coaxes her in because, like, the entire movie, Beth's been in love with hiking, and Zach never wants to go, apparently. So he tells her, like, hey, let's go hiking. And Beth's like, yeah, let's go hiking. And on his way out, out of the house, he runs into his brother, and his brother is, like, openly shooting the zombies because there are so fucking many of them. And they show way too many close-up shots of the oven on her back because it's clearly like a prop oven that's made to be lighter so she can carry it, and it just looks like shit. Like, they could have just as easily taken real knobs and shit like that from a real oven and retrofitted it to a prop and been way better off, but they didn't. And they go out quote unquote hiking, and really this is just like the brother gave Zach a fucking pistol, and Zach is just taking Beth somewhere that he can shoot her and leave her. And so, he goes through telling her all of the things he loves about her and wishes he would have done different and blah, blah, blah. And he shoots her, and she goes tumbling down the hill, and that's the end of it for her. And Anna Kendrick is nowhere to be seen. Haven't seen her since the diner. And out of nowhere, she appears. And Zach finds his parents are still alive, and everything comes back together. The most frustrating part of this entire movie for me is, like, you don't really understand what's going on. And then when Zach finds his parents miraculously, they're talking about getting somewhere where they can, be safe, and they set up the whole, like they're going to go somewhere else. And then all of a sudden it's like the TV turns back, like all the power turns back on and the TV turns on. And basically it's just a news report essentially just saying everything's good. Everything's okay right now. It seems like the coast is clear and we can go back to normal. And that's it. That's all they fucking give you as an explanation. And I'm like, this situation was escalating way too fucking quickly. Like, there's no fucking way that it would have just resolved itself like that. I don't buy it. If it's not shitty, if that's not a shitty fucking way to tell a story, then this was not the portion of the story you needed to be focusing on. You should not have focused on Zach and Beth. You should have focused on whoever it was that was resolving the zombie issues, right? And they don't say at all what made everything go back to normal. And that's the hardest part for me. And Beth's mom gets her hand bitten off by Beth, and she doesn't turn into a zombie, and she doesn't, she just goes back to normal and she's fine. So, I mean, that's this movie. That's it. That's Life After Beth. The cast is stellar. I'll say that. I was really surprised how deep this cast was and how good it was. And then I guess I would say the story was pretty original. It was all right. I guess being original is not all that there is. If you can make a good story that's unoriginal, then I'd rather watch that than this. And it's a somewhat slow burn in this movie. Like, you don't necessarily see what's happening with everybody, and you don't really know what's going on. And I guess it's because it's from the perspective of Zach, so you don't see what everybody else is doing. But biggest criticism, the ending. It's a very unresolved ending. You don't really feel much satisfaction from it, and I get what they were going for, but it didn't land for me. There's just a lot of shit that's all over the place. They should have had to leave. They should have, when they were planning to go somewhere else, I wouldn't have just taken a single news broadcast saying everything was good, the coast is clear, go back to normal life, I would have really been fucking surprised if that would have been the way things would have shaken out, if they would have wanted to get a bunch of people together and go to Machu Picchu or whatever. Or a couple of notes. Nick Offerman can be heard narrating the documentary on Machu Picchu in the beginning of the film, and there are many references made to Parks and Rec because of Aubrey Plaza. So there wasn't really much in the IMDb trivia other than that, and I guess that's just kind of the way it is. But runtime of this movie, 89 minutes, budget $2.4 million, worldwide gross $275,000, IMDb rating 5.6, Rotten Tomato critics score 45%, Rotten Tomato audience score 31%, personal rating 2 out of 5 stars. Yeah. Moving on to Last Night in Soho, released October 29th, 2021, and that was the UK release date. I couldn't find the US release date. I want to say it was this year. Directed by Edgar Wright. He also did another favorite of this show's Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. He also did Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, and Baby Driver, among others. He also wrote the movie. The soundtrack of this movie, I have to say, right up front, is fucking amazing. For me, it made the movie more worth watching than anything, and that's really saying something. There are so many 60s classics in this, and there are so many cool ones where Edgar Wright wanted to do a song that it was like, the popular version was like one that came out in the 80s or 90s, but the original version was a 60s version. And so he took the original version and put it in the movie, and it sounds like, because a lot of the movie, like Always Something There to Remind Me by Naked Eyes, I didn't realize that wasn't their original song. I thought that was them, and then they play the song and I'm like, oh, that's weird. Somebody did this song in the style of the 1960s. Like, how bizarre. What an odd choice. And then, of course, that's not really what happened. Okay, so first build in this movie is Thomasin McKenzie. She plays Eloise, or Ellie. She was in The Hobbit, Battle of the Five Armies, and Jojo Rabbit and Old. Anya Taylor-Joy plays the character of Sandy. She was in The Witch, Split, Glass, Peaky Blinders, and The Queen's Gambit. She's kind of at the height of her power right now. She's not, to me, I don't know if I would put her in the realm of like, God, I don't know. Ana de Armas and her are both, like, if they were in a movie together, I think the world would explode. But they're both really great right now. Okay, so we've got Matt Smith, who plays the character Jack. And he was he was one of the doctors, Doctor Who. And I think he might have been the 11th Doctor. And then he was in The Crown. Also in this movie is Terrence Stamp, who plays Lindsay. And I know him from Superman 1 and 2 as General Zod because he's fucking awesome as a villain. Fucking amazing. Diana Rigg is in this movie, and she plays Old Sandy. I know her from On Her Majesty's Secret Service, the James Bond movie, where she plays Teresa. And then she was in the original TV show The Avengers that was made into a shitty movie in the 90s with Uma Thurman and Ralph Fiennes. And she also played Lady Olenna in Game of Thrones. No real casting notes to be made. I mean, they wanted Anya Taylor-Joy. They originally were going to have her in the original lead role, and then they decided to make her be the other character. Plot synopsis: a young woman moves to London to pursue an education in fashion, but her dreams take her back in time to the 1960s for a glimpse of a woman's harrowing experience who lived in the same room as her. Great. Top notch. Great writing, Brandon. Okay, so I've seen this movie's trailer a lot this year, and that's why I'm thinking like the US release was in 2022, because I just seem to remember seeing it a lot more recently than this movie led me to believe, but I might be wrong. Maybe it just, maybe time crept up on me. I don't know much from the trailer. I didn't know much going in about the actual plot of the movie, and I think that's a good thing. I like when they don't give away the entire plot, and they try and make it as alluring as possible. Main girl Ellie is dancing in the beginning of this movie in a dress that looks like a newspaper print, and that's pretty nifty. I like the look. She's like happily doing voices in the mirror. It's very bright, it's very light, it's very nice. And then she finds out she's going to London, and she's super fucking stoked about it. I made a note that no one in this movie is in an acceptable age range for me to develop a crush on, or at least by my standards, they're not. And that's kind of the way it is. I just have to deal with the fact that I can't be crushing on somebody. So Ellie misses her mom died when she was like 7. She committed suicide, and everything's kind of circling that, that whole thing. Like, it's just everything is surrounding how she feels about her mother, and she wants to make her mom proud, or whatever, and she wants to do everything she can. At this point, the soundtrack to this movie is already noteworthy for being fucking stellar, and she gets to London, and her roommate is completely ridiculous. Like, she's kind of adding humor into the movie where I think it needs it, but they have all these weird interactions where it's like they don't get along with one another. They go, her and the roommate and a bunch of friends go to this bar, and there's the old cliche where Ellie's sitting in a stall, and she hears the door open, and she like lifts her feet up onto the seat of the toilet so that nobody can tell she's in there. And she, all 3 of these girls, including her roommate, go in there, and the roommate is just talking wicked shit about her. Like, she's just saying all sorts of bad stuff about her, and how, she doesn't have any hope, and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, holy shit, man. It's just such a cliche to me to have that happen. Like, it's like, oh, yay, I can hear these people talk shit about me because they don't know I'm here. How nice, It's at this point we see Terrence Stamp for the first time, and he's the kind of guy that I haven't seen in anything else, to the point that, like, I would not recognize him if I, had the, unless I, in this situation, I had seen the cast list. I already knew that Terrence Stamp was in this movie, and when I saw the cast list, I was like, oh shit, and then I was like, I wonder if I'm going to recognize him, because I've seen that he was in movies I didn't realize he was in before. sure enough, like, he popped up on screen. I was like, oh, that is him. Holy shit. And he's obviously he's got like grayish white hair, and, he's pretty old now. But so at this point, she's still living with the roommate, Ellie is. And one night she's like laying in bed listening to music, and they're just in a dorm, I guess, because the roommate busts in the door and just starts fucking this dude on the bed without even acknowledging that Ellie is present. And it's like, okay, I mean, I guess. And I don't know if that's normal in dorms. I never lived in a dorm, so I wouldn't even imagine or to want to chance a guess about what would normally happen. And so she starts looking for another place, and when she finds this other place, it's like Diana Rigg is running this, and you're just like not really familiar with like, anything about Diana Rigg. She's just like a stern old woman, and I mean, Diana Rigg is the fucking best. Like, I've never seen something she was in that I didn't love her in. Basically, she rents the room, she decides to move out of the dorm, and she goes up to the room and she falls asleep, and all of a sudden it's like is she dreaming? Is it fantasy? Is it real? What's going on? And she watches as this, she's kind of getting a first person perspective of Anya Taylor-Joy in the 1960s, and she's just kind of like watching what she does and the things that she has happened to her and all this stuff. And it's pretty cool. She walks out of this alleyway, and there's a marquee for the 1965 film Thunderball with Sean Connery, which is a James Bond movie. It just they really do a great job setting this up, guys. It's fucking great. So they keep doing stuff, and they do all of these moments where they're looking in mirrors, and Anya Taylor-Joy is in the real world of the 1960s, and Ellie is in the world of her own world, and she's like in the mirror when Anya Taylor-Joy looks. And it's like they do all of these big scenes where Anya Taylor-Joy and Thomasin McKenzie are just making these big productions of, what they're doing and trying to mirror each other. We meet Matt Smith, who was the Doctor Who guy. And then, I mean, you just see how much confidence Anya Taylor-Joy's character has. Her name is Sandy, by the way. I can probably just call her Sandy. I noted at this point that there's like an altercation at the club, and this guy drops the cunt word. And I just fucking love how liberally the Brits drop the cunt word, and they don't even seem bothered by it a little bit. I just like the way they think. This movie is really well stylized. Like, it looks awesome. They use lighting, they use different things with like great success. They really set the mood and set the tone for this film. It really does fucking great work. So the old roomie is, so she's going to college, obviously, and like I don't even know if I mentioned that, but she's going to college as, she wants to be in fashion. She's in these classes with her old roommate from the dorms, and the roomie is bullying her openly. It was like 40 minutes in when this started happening, and that was when I started to like question, this plot needs to fucking pick the fuck up. Like, it needs to get together, because other than going to this dream world, I don't really understand where it's going. You know what I mean? I want to have some kind of line of sight on what's happening in this fucking movie. And it's like another example of the soundtrack. It's like they play I've Got My Mind Set on You, and it's the original version. And I'm always used to the George Harrison cover version, so I don't even think twice about it. And so Anya Taylor-Joy is doing this audition at this club, and she is going to sing Petula Clark's Downtown song from 1964. And I don't know much about my late grandmother's taste in music on my mom's side, but she loved Downtown by Petula Clark. And so it was a cool thing that they included that in this movie just for me. I would say this, to give you an image of what this girl looks like, this Ellie, Thomasin McKenzie, she looks like what would happen if you took like Abigail Breslin in Signs and you digitally aged her up instead of just looking to see how old, or, what Abigail Breslin looks like now. If you tried to make it happen. And I would say that's probably the best way I can do it. She's only like, I want to say she's under 20 in this movie. She's very young. And because this movie was shot like a couple of years ago, it was one of the ones that got disrupted by the pandemic. Sandy gets the audition after she does her Downtown song, and they're doing this show, and it's like the marionette looking like Pinocchio type show where they make the person performing look like they're on strings. And then they didn't even like go all in on the puppet thing. And it's like, they didn't do a good job at all of anything. And I fucking hate that look. Like it creeps me out. Like when you do, oh, these people are going to look like toys and they're going to mimic the movements of toys. And cause like all these people have, like the sidewinder things, like the tourniquets that you would turn on the side of toys to wind them up. And I really didn't like the sequence. I mean, it really didn't go well for me. Meanwhile, Ellie, she's kind of having trouble getting traction at school. Her and this black guy keep interacting with each other, and he seems to really like her, and she kind of seems to be in her own little world. Ellie gets this job at a pub, and she's talking to her aunt or, whoever it is that she knows back home. The aunt says something that's just a really good quote. It doesn't really, I don't know if it resonates as much within the movie as I want it to, but she says, "I know you think you have something to prove, but it's okay to ask for help. She didn't," referring to Ellie's mom. And it's like, wow, that's a really good quote. So she keeps running into General Zod, Terrence Stamp, and everything about this movie, every interaction that they have, it's like, I want to do an Irish accent or a Scottish accent. I don't know which one it sounds like. And I should have known at this point, because we keep getting these dream sequences and things keep getting a little more surreal and things are a little more ridiculous with every step. And it's like, where are we, where could we possibly be going but to trippy, dreamy, bullshit area. And the character just keeps imagining things or keeps seeing things, like things are seeping into the real world from the fantasy life and things like that. And they go to, while it keeps happening that, Ellie is seeing more and more of the stuff seeping through in her normal life, she goes to a costume party. And I have to make a note of the fact that every TV and movie episode or every costume party that there is out there in Hollywood, it's all like they really grossly overestimate how dedicated and how much quantity and quality you will get for costume participation. Like, it just does not happen like that. I mean, a lot of people don't wear costumes. A lot of people look like shit. And it's like, get the fuck out of here. It's like, it reminds me of in Batman Returns, they're doing a costume party at Christmas time for some reason. And Bruce Wayne goes to the party and he doesn't dress up. He just wears a tux or something. And somebody makes a comment about his, lack of a costume, but he is legitimately like the only person you see on screen that is not like a member of, the wait staff for the party as like not wearing costumes, right? So it's like, it's fucking ridiculous. At this point in the movie, I'm not really feeling scared by anything. It's all a little too ridiculous for me to get there. But the soundtrack is still 5 stars across the board. And there's a nice interaction where Ellie finally breaks down with this black guy that she keeps hanging out with and running into, that she's like stringing along for no reason. And she says, and the guy said, like they make out, and then the guy says, "Do you want to go someplace else?" And she says, "I'm not meant to have boys back." And he says, "Oh." And he gets a sad look on his face. She says, "So you'll have to be quiet." And he smiles. And then, like the next scene is them at her apartment, and it's just like, it's a really good sequence. It amazes me at that point that like society used to act like it was such a fucking big deal if an interracial couple was on screen. And it's like, who gives a shit? I don't care. I don't care if it's an interracial couple. I don't care if it's a gay couple, trans couple. I don't care. I mean, who am I? What do I give a shit? I mean, let them do their thing. In my notes, it says, I love this Always Something There to Remind Me cover in the 60s style, which was my mistake because I hadn't looked it up yet and I wanted to. And it was not a cover, it was the original song. And I just had never heard it. And it's at this point, like late in the movie, it starts to really kick it up a notch and get scary. And it's been a slow burn so far. Like real life comes together with the imaginary or the past or whatever. And it's like, it's very unsettling. And you really think, because like they reveal, as I said, spoilers, so get the fuck over it. Diana Rigg's character is Anya Taylor-Joy's character all grown up. You think that Anya Taylor-Joy died, so you don't really, Ellie just assumes that, but it's not really the case. Basically, at this point, like Diana Rigg is like ready to kill Ellie because she doesn't want because basically you find out that I think it's like Sandy, Diana Rigg's character, and Anya Taylor-Joy's character had been like pushed into like sex trafficking basically, and she started like murdering all of her Johns. So it was pretty fucking intense from that standpoint. And of course Diana Rigg is a fucking badass, and she I think she poisons the coffee that she gives to Ellie. I legitimately at this point was rooting for Diana Rigg to fucking kill Ellie and get away with it. And it would have, to me, it would have been honestly a better choice. Like it would have been a more satisfying movie. And I just keep thinking like, I want Ellie to die. I'm just ready for it to happen. They keep making it in every movie that it's got to be like the good guys win and the bad guys lose. And it's like, no, that's not the way it always goes down. At this point I'm starting to think like, hey, this soundtrack has gotten really Danny Elfman-y, but it doesn't get too aggressive for too long. And then they keep showing the mom, like Ellie's mom in the mirror. And whenever Ellie looks in it, she sees her mom, and it's like her mom looks virtually nothing like her at all. It's a really unsatisfying casting for someone that you could have cast literally anybody, because she has no fucking lines whatsoever to speak of. And I mean, it's just, she goes, they have this, she ends up winning. Diana Rigg kind of like accepts her fate and like goes down with this burning apartment building, and her, Ellie and the guy that she was with, sneak out, and they get to safety. And then you see this scene after the fact where Ellie is, doing a fashion show, and she, is all dressed up nice, and she's, the models are walking down the runway and all that stuff. But biggest praise for this movie would be the soundtrack, first and foremost. The acting across the board is spectacular. I couldn't complain about one character on screen not being up to par. The cinematography, every shot, I mean, I guess it's a thing with Edgar Wright that he likes to do a lot of Steadicam type stuff, but it's just, I mean, it's just really cool. I mean, it's really awesome looking. I would say that like early on in this movie, it really struggled to keep my attention because they didn't really dial it up enough, And because I mean, there are other movies that it's like they ended up being shittier movies, but they didn't take so fucking long and do such a slow burn to like make it work. And so it struggled to keep my attention, and I didn't really care for the Hollywood style ending. I mean, aside from that, it was pretty solid. I would have said, honestly, if you let Ellie die and let her boyfriend die, and you just see a shot at the end of the movie of Diana Rigg sitting on the bed, and like she's doing something, like she's mirroring Anya Taylor-Joy or something, I think that would have been a really good idea, but they didn't do it. And maybe I don't know what happened, if there was, if that was in the plans or not. A little bit of trivia. Edgar Wright is very enamored with the 60s. He, his parents had a huge 1960s record collection. and they had stories from back then, and they also had a lot of, he watched a lot of the films from that era. The scene where Eloise first sees Sandy through the mirror was done practically, with the cloakroom attendant being played by twin actors, which didn't realize that. I mean, I thought they did an okay job of, like, it's got to be really hard to do, but I didn't really think that Anya Taylor-Joy and Thomasin McKenzie really matched up super well. Like, it wasn't like impressive, like, oh wow, they really look like mirror images of each other. This is the final performance of a few actresses, among them Diana Rigg. The stills of London that appear during the end credits are ones that were taken during the COVID pandemic shutdown, and they are actual shots of what the streets look like with no one on them. IMDb nuggets, I've got a few here, my goodness. When Ellie is walking in the first stream, you can watch a poster of the film Thunderball, performed by the actor Sean Connery. Yup, it's literally all right there on the fucking marquee. It says Thunderball with Sean Connery, and it has everything that you need. That's not trivia, guys. That's nothing. That is just a point in this movie that happens. Here is one where I say, okay, let's just speculate wildly for a minute and just pretend like it's trivia, okay? Diana Rigg plays a singer who was pimped out in her youth by Jack as a young woman in the 1960s, which may be a dark, in parentheses, commentary on Rigg's role as a sex symbol in her 1960s work as Emma Peel, a legacy with which Rigg herself was uncomfortable. What are you talking about? That is just fucking bullshit. Like, it's just, you have no real reason to believe that was an actual thing. No one has said that was a thing. It's just insane to me. Runtime, 116 minutes. Budget, $43 million. Worldwide gross, $23 million. IMDb rating, 7.1. Rotten Tomato critics score, 76%. Rotten Tomato audience score, 90%. Personal rating, 4.5 out of 5 stars. I just needed a better ending for this movie. It was not satisfying the way it went. All right, well, that is all I got for you guys today. I ran a little long here again, but I'm going to try and clean that up for the next couple episodes. Please check out my other episodes that are up, see if you have anything that you like. Let me know if you have any suggestions about movies to do or formats to try or things like that, and I might or might not give them a try. And that's all I have. My blog is at brandonatrandom.reviews.com, and have a wonderful day. Brandon at Random Reviews is performed, written, directed, produced, and edited by Brandon Griffiths. Theme music is performed by Augusto Diniz from Fiverr.